We don't know our strength, but I promise it can expand far greater than we think.
Thank you for clicking on this video. I'm Brooke Makenna, but today we are going to be talking about an abduction. Now, Girl in the Bunker is a new Lifetime movie, but it is based on the true story of the abduction of a girl named Elizabeth Shoaf. And I'm going to be telling you about her real story right now. Please go ahead and thumbs up if you want me to do more true crime cases, and make sure to leave requests down below, and let's get back to the story. Now, Elizabeth was just a regular girl going to school. She was 14 years old, but on the day of September 6th, 2016, she went to school that day. She got on the bus to go home, but she never made it home. She had gotten off the school bus and went to walk the few feet from the bus stop to her home that went through a woodsy area. She was walking on Leaning Tree Road in Lugoff, South Carolina, and it was about 4:30 when this man approached her. Now, a man approached her wearing camouflage, and he had handcuffs and he had a badge on his shirt, and he said he was a police officer. So Elizabeth, of course, stopped for the police officer and kind of said, "What's going on?" And this man said that she was being arrested for something to do with marijuana, and that her little brother Donnie had already been arrested. This kind of angered Elizabeth because she was very protective over her little brother Donnie, and so she, of course, went with him just to see what was going on. He handcuffed her, and then he put a bomb around her neck and started walking with her, leading her through the woods. She thought possibly they were headed to his police car, but a police car never showed up, and she was walking through the woods with this man. He began asking her very strange questions for a police officer, like, "Do you have a cell phone? Are you a virgin?" And that's when the sinking feeling in her stomach got even worse. Her heart started pounding, and she knew that something bad was happening. This man led her through the woods for what seemed like forever, what was about probably an hour, just looping her in circles, getting her confused and disoriented of the area. And it was working, because she really had no idea where she was, even though she was so very close to her home, less than a mile. He led her to this area where he all of a sudden picked up a part of the ground. She was very confused until she realized that he opened a trap door, and down below was an opening that he was telling her to go through. Now, while they were walking, she actually asked what was going on, which he responded to with, "You're a smart girl. You should have figured that out." When she heard those words, she decided to take off her shoes while he wasn't paying attention, to leave them behind and possibly give someone a clue as to where she was. But now he was telling her to go down the ladder into this hole in the ground in the woods. He was holding a gun, as well as having guns in his belt, and also had a taser. So she knew she had no other choice but to get down in this hole if she didn't want to die right then and there. This hole was right beside a trailer. It was 15 feet deep, 4 feet wide, and 20 feet long. It was made of dirt. He had dug up the dirt, and around the walls was basically a sheet of fabric covering the fact that they were dirt walls. When she got inside this hole, she realized that it was a hand-dug privy, and the muggy smell enveloped her. She saw the homemade bed, the homemade shelves made out of sticks and branches, and she also saw the toilet, which was just a broken chair over a bucket. There were also homemade grenades and a flare gun inside. And although Elizabeth knew that she wasn't too far from home, she couldn't leave. And this is when the man told her to take off her clothes, and he raped her. While he was doing so, she was looking off in another direction at the shelves that were filled with many different supplies, and that's when she realized that he had planned this and wanted to keep her for a very long time. She was kept naked and chained to the roof, and the bomb was still around her neck, and he told her if she tried to escape, the bomb would explode. A guarantee that she would die. Her parents reported her as missing as soon as she didn't come home from school. Her mom was normally at work, but Elizabeth would call her every afternoon when she got home just to tell her mom, say hello, tell her she got home, and she didn't do it that day. And also her aunt, Elizabeth's aunt, was supposed to come down and cut her hair, and she was so excited about this, even telling her friends at school about it that day. And suddenly she just wasn't home. Her mom knew that something was very wrong when she called the house, and Elizabeth's 12-year-old brother Donnie answered the phone instead of Elizabeth. Now, although Elizabeth's family was adamant that something had happened to her, the police said she was just a runaway. There wasn't enough information apparently to do anything for her. They refused to put out an Amber Alert, and they didn't really want to do any searches as of right then. They said she was just a runaway, they listed her as one, and there was nothing else that they could do for now. So Elizabeth's mother went on TV pleading for her to come home or for a safe return, because that's all she could really do. As the days went by, inside that tiny bunker, Elizabeth was still chained to the roof, and she would continue to be raped from 2 to 5 times a day. She was kept naked the entire time, and in the night it would get really cold, and all she had to do was think and mourn the loss of her life before and her childhood before, because now that was all being stripped away. They had a battery-powered operator in the bunker as a tiny TV, but occasionally this man that was holding her captor, would turn it on. To her dismay, she saw her mother on the news reporting her as missing instead of kidnapped. And while watching this, her captor told her that she would never be found. But she watched her mom talking on the news about how they wouldn't issue an Amber Alert for her because they thought she was a runaway. This really angered Elizabeth at first, hearing this, because she wanted to go home. But she decided to take it as a renewal of hope, that at least they realized she was missing and they were trying to do something. A few days after the abduction, the police finally led a search with volunteers coming from all over the place as well to look for her. They had helicopter search dogs, and while they were searching for her, Elizabeth actually saw some of the shadows of the searchers going across the bunker door. She didn't say anything though, because her captor told her that if she tried, he would just taser her and knock her out. So she thought there was really no point in trying. She heard the helicopter above her. They were so close, but they didn't find her. Like I said before, the door was in the ground and was so amazingly covered that somebody could walk right past it and wouldn't see it. In the search, it also didn't help that there were so many random volunteers that weren't being contained. At any time the police actually followed footsteps thinking that possibly it was Elizabeth and was going to lead them to where she was, it was just the volunteers' footprints instead, and so they had to go and start all over and find new ones. The search ended and they had come up with nothing. They hadn't found the bunker, and while Elizabeth's mom was at home praying for her to come home, Elizabeth was slowly losing hope. Her captor told her that he had set booby traps all around the bunker, so if anyone even tried to come close, they wouldn't be able to. He showed her one of his booby traps that he had made that was basically bullets sticking up, and that if anybody stepped on it, they would shoot them in the foot. So odds were they just kept stacking against finding Elizabeth, and that's when Elizabeth knew that there wasn't a chance that she was going to be found. She was going to have to escape. A few days later, Elizabeth decided she was going to kill him. He was sleeping and she saw his pellet gun laying there. She picked it up, aimed it at his head, and pulled the trigger. But it was jammed, and she did not want to risk trying to unjam it and waking him up, so she sat it down and cried. But instead of giving up, this brave girl decides that instead she's going to gain her captor's trust. She began doing to him what he was doing to her. If he would call her baby, she would do the same. If he would say he loved her, she would do the exact same. She acted like she really liked him and wanted to be with him, wanted to be there. And this man was so delusional that it worked. He started to let her go outside the bunker actually at night for fresh air, and would go down to the little pond that they had for fresh water, and they would get it together. What he didn't know was that the entire time On the way there and the way back, every time he would let her out, she would pull out strands of her own hair to leave on either the ground or the branches in case rescuers, search dogs, went in that area and could pick up her scent. The trips outside began to get more and more regular, and she was no longer being tied up or threatened, and this man was even talking about moving to another state after people stopped looking for her and living together like normal. She went along with this, but the entire time she was just trying to think of new ways to get out. On the 5th day in captivity, she had seen her captor on his cell phone texting either his girlfriend or his wife, and she got an idea. She decided to ask him if she could play games on his phone, and at this point, remember, he had trust in her, so he did. He let her have his phone to play games. The next 2 days, she tried so hard to send messages when he would fall asleep, but every single one said no service because they were down below in this bunker. And so she just continued to try to send them, and they would all just fail. But on the 7th day, the 3rd day she had been trying to send messages, when he fell asleep, she got the courage to walk up the ladder, open the trapdoor just a little bit, stick her hand out through it, and try to send the message. She didn't think that it went through, so she just went back in the bunker and gave up trying to text. But that message did go through. It went to her mom, and it said, "Hey Mom, it's Lizzie. I'm in a hole down by the road or by Charm Hill, the road where big trucks go in and out. Call the police because there's a bomb." Her mom gets the message and knows instantly that this isn't someone playing a joke on her. It sounds just like how Lizzie Elizabeth would talk. So she instantly calls the police, and Sheriff McCaskill calls the techs in the area to try to trace the cell phone. They trace it to a telephone tower near the underground bunker, and that's when they got the number who led to the name of a man named Vincent Philyaw, who was already known by the authorities. So they decide to go to his house because now they have an address, and he's not there. But what they find at his house is many bunkers, just like the one Elizabeth is in, but in his own backyard. This is when they become very concerned and put his picture out on the news to ask the public if they know about his whereabouts. Her mom was very anxious about this, thinking that what if something happens to her Elizabeth because now he knows she sent that text. And she was right. He was watching that little battery-operated TV, and he got very angry. And remember, Elizabeth didn't know that her message went out, so she was a little excited when it came on the TV that her message had gone through to her mom. But then she realized that he was angry, and so she lied. She said, "No, I want to be here. I'm in love with you. I didn't send that message." She was crying, and that's when she realized that Vincent, the name of her captor that she now knew, wasn't angry. He was scared, and now he was turning to her for advice, asking her what he should do, if he should stay and wait if they found her, or if he should flee now and get out while he can. And so she took that as her opportunity to tell him to get out, run as fast and as far as he can to try to avoid the police. He did. He walked up that ladder out of the bunker and left Elizabeth by herself for the first time in 9 days. She had told him that she didn't want him to go to jail, that she loved him and wanted him to run, and he did. On the next day, the morning of the 10th, Elizabeth finally got the courage to climb up the ladder herself and open up the trap door. She heard search dogs barking in an area just a little ways away from her, so she started screaming, "Hello, hello, hello," more than 10 times, and finally she heard her name being called back at her, and that is when she fell to the ground, just sobbing. Captain David Tomley was the first to get to her and tell her that they had been searching for her for so long, and that's when he called the ambulance and she was taken to the hospital. While they were searching for Elizabeth, the police found 3 other hidden bunkers in the same wooden area, more than the ones just at his house. These were in the wooded area by Elizabeth. Most of them had a hidden underground tunnel system back to Vincent's house. This is how much he had planned. Like I said before, Vincent Philyaw was already known by the authorities because he was a 36-year-old, unemployed sex offender who was wanted for the molestation of a 12-year-old girl named Amber, who was his girlfriend's daughter, who lived with him at the time. So Elizabeth's in the hospital, she sees her family, she's so excited, but she refuses to go home because she says that Vincent threatened her that if she ever got away, he would go after her 12-year-old brother, Donnie. So she refuses to go home and says until he's found, she's not going home. So hearing her entire story, the police, especially Sheriff McCaskill, are fueled by anger, and they start the manhunt for Vincent Villia. 11 days after, on September 17th at 2 a.m., a woman going out of a pizza restaurant is carjacked, or is attempted to be carjacked. She has her child with her, and she yells at the man, recognizing him from the news as being a Vincent Villia, saying that she cannot believe that he would do this in front of her child, and basically that he wasn't getting her keys. And he said, okay, and started running. Her name is Jennifer Lynn, and she called the police instantly, saying she had seen him and he was running this certain way. They immediately headed out and caught him on Interstate 20, 5 miles from his home. He had a gun and a long knife, and they tackled him to the ground into a ditch and arrested him then and there. He admitted in an interview right before his trial that his original plan was to kidnap Amber, his first victim, because he was angry at her for making these accusations that he had done things to her, and now he was living in the woods to try to get away. So he was going to kidnap her. But when the police took her out of the state and put her in foster care, he thought of a new plan. He was going to pick a new girl to kidnap. He was going to put her in the bunker, and then he was going to get all the police to come to the area where he was and blow them all up. Then he said he was unable to do so because he fell for Elizabeth and he didn't really want to die, so he ended up not blowing anyone up. But Elizabeth had admitted that he was scared. But then he changed his story a few moments later to Elizabeth wanted to be there, and they were writing a book together about this whole experience to make money. He couldn't keep his story straight, but Elizabeth could. She remembered every terrifying, horrific detail of her abduction, and he was just making up lies. Finally, at trial, Vincent Villia pleaded guilty for kidnapping and 10 counts of criminal sexual conduct, not only of Elizabeth, but of his first victim, Amber. He was sentenced to 421 years in prison with no parole. He showed no remorse for what he had done, and Elizabeth was in that courtroom sitting tall as he got his sentence. The judge in the trial had actually released the jury and decided to take it upon himself to make the verdict. And he said, "I have a strong belief you have forfeited your right to be a member of this society. I can think of no crime short of murder more repulsive than these." So Vincent Villia got what he deserved. And Elizabeth still stands tall. She was strong from beginning to end to her real life now. She's still such a brave girl, and she basically saved herself. If it wasn't for all of the things that she had done, she probably never would have been found. She is such a strong, she's a hero in my eyes, not only for herself, but for everyone. And she even says that she never wants to forget what happened to her. And she says that people say she's weird because of that. But she wants to remember, because that's something she got through that not many people could get through. And she always wants to remember how strong she really is. Elizabeth went on to graduate high school and technical school, and now she's a dental assistant who also volunteers with the police to make sure and talk to children about stranger danger and what that really means. She wants her story to be a lesson to others, and she's working every day to make that possible. So I will end this video of her with this quote from her. "If you've been through anything, you can still make it. You can be a survivor just like I am. It simply takes faith. It takes talking to someone and encouragement that it's not the end of the world." Elizabeth was a strong woman, and every single one of you out there are strong too. You can get through whatever you are going through, I promise. Please thumbs up if you want more true crime cases and you like the way I present them, and subscribe and spread and share these cases if you want to, and I would love to see you in my next video. I'll let you guys go. Bye.
Your struggle is your story. Never be ashamed of that.